Tennessee, of course, coming off a top 10 season for the first time in a long, long time. I believe 2007, maybe 2004, something in that range off the top of my head. We got Charlie Burrs on the line talking up Vols for us just a few weeks from the opener. Charlie, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Mark. Apologies for not having my full setup. You're just getting a weird corporate picture of me there, but I'll maybe on one of these soon. I'll be back with my full camera and everything.
I was just going to compliment you for your corporate picture. It's the most cleaned up that we've seen you, and I can't match you, unfortunately, but
yeah,
it's a good look.
Did literally pay to have that picture taken, so it better look good. That's
it represents you well, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so.
And everybody can catch Charlie on the Big Orange podcast, and you see his Twitter handle, so follow it right there. Also at Big Orange Pod. Well, some injuries to talk about, and we wanted to clear up Cooper Mays, the center, who's had a procedure, and he's out, hopefully not for long.
Yeah, so it's kind of up in the air. The things that I've seen has said it's looking unlikely for the season opener at Virginia. I would put it this way. If they need Cooper Mays against Virginia, this team is going to be in trouble no matter how you slice it. So honestly, I kind of look at it as some good opportunities for guys behind him. They've been having to bring over some other dudes at that position. I believe Ollie Lane, Addison Nichols has been getting some work there, but we were talking about this on my own show, the Big Orange podcast this week. That position is probably the thinnest on the team, and it's so important. I mean, especially behind that center position, it just really is completely unproven. Now, the guys behind that are unproven, they could end up being good. There's a definite chance of that. They just may not be. And that's a chance you don't want to take. Hopefully Cooper Mays gets back and everything's all right. But as of right now, it's just not set in stone.
And then elsewhere, not necessarily impacting this season, but down the road, Tyree Weathersby, 4-star defensive lineman, one of the top 300 players in the country, freshman defensive lineman out for the season. Deshaun Bishop, I don't know how much Tennessee was counting on him, the freshman. He's going to be out probably a couple months.
Yeah, so I would say for both of those guys, if Tennessee really needed them, they they're probably in trouble anyway. But yeah, specifically Deshaun Bishop, you just have two super veteran returning guys at running back. So hopefully you don't have a real need for Deshaun Bishop. Although he had a lot of potential there. He looked like a really fun player in the spring game. And now may not get to play that much this season, depending on what happens. But with Weathersby potential that he could have played, he was one of those where he's flashed at times in the preseason, but more than that, you don't really know what you would be getting from him. So if you're gonna have losses, I would say keep it to just guys like that, young guys, where they probably weren't going to be big contributors anyway, and that's okay. Obviously, you don't love it, but if you're going to have injuries, let it be guys that were probably not super high impact. But just hopefully both of those guys can be super high impact in the future. But they're not massive losses, even though we definitely wish those injuries didn't happen at all.
When the Vols walked off the field at the Orange Bowl, many just believed, okay, Joe Milton passed the test. He's the starting quarterback for 2023. But now we got, of course, Nico, and I'm just going to say this about him right now in terms of his last name. This season's version of Uiagalelei, which we all learned to pronounce, or most of us. But I couldn't even give it a shot on Nico because I haven't heard you pronounce or anybody else pronounce the name for a couple months now. So, but there is a quarterback competition. Give it to us.
Nico Iau-Maliava. The IA is Iau, I believe, from how I've heard from the horse's mouth there. That's how I've heard Nico himself say it. So, but there's not so saying it's a quarterback competition is kind of a misnomer here. It's Joe Milton and it's his team until it's not. This is another thing that we were talking about on my own show this week and kind of trying to talk through exactly how much slack Joe Milton might end up having as the starter. And I would say that Josh Heupel really trusts his guy. I mean, he's a third-year guy at Tennessee. He's a fifth-year guy overall for college football. A third-year guy at Tennessee. He knows this offense front and back. He played really well in the Orange Bowl. I think you haven't seen his entire ability be unlocked even. I think they were very conservative with him against Vanderbilt. And then at the end of the season, after Hendon Hooker went out with injury, and they didn't run him there, but he's a monster. And if he can become, a little more cerebral and really be more instinctual like Hendon Hooker was, and he may have that ability. I don't think we've seen enough from him to really make that determination yet. If he has that ability, he's a tank. I mean, he has serious speed and he has Cam Newton size. So you put that together with probably the strongest arm in the game of football at the moment. And that's a pretty scary prospect as a quarterback. And I think Josh Heupel really believes in what he's got in Joe Milton. Joe Milton was his guy. Josh Heupel actually brought him in. Hendon Hooker came in with Pruitt. But, I think they really like him and they're going to ride with him until they have a reason not to. And that could absolutely happen. I would say it's probably going to take till Florida or beyond. And ideally, he plays the entire season. He has a Heisman campaign and Tennessee wins the national title. That would be the perfect outcome. But in the same, I think they really believe in Nico too, though. If they have to go to him, this staff hasn't said a crossword about the kid, and almost nobody that I've heard talk about him at all has said anything almost negative. I mean, you talk to anybody who watched him before he got to Tennessee, and the take was this kid's going to be special. Now he's at Tennessee, and you get there for a lot of guys, and it can be overwhelming, and it can just be a lot to finally step up to that college level. The game's a lot quicker. Everybody you play against is bigger, more talented, all of these things. And still, the take has been, it looks like this kid is going to be special. And so hopefully that's all true and not just kind of blind optimism. I don't think it is. I think he is uber talented. But I will put it this way. Hopefully they don't have to use Nico, but if they do, I think they believe in him too. So it's a good problem to have. And ideally, this will be a one quarterback team this season.
And the wide receiver recruiting and development and transfers, when you put all that together, has gotten to the point where you can lose the Blitnikoff Award winner. And it appears as though the wide receiver core is going to be one of the best in the nation again.
It really is crazy how Josh Heupel has been able to put together a set of kids that, when he showed up, it was really ragtag. Then within the first 2 years, he has a Blitnikoff winner. And then this season's lineup, you have a former 5-star in Brew McCoy, who really shined at times last season and is so tall and powerful and great at finding the ball in the air. And then you go to Dante Thornton, who was a really solid player at Oregon, but I think he wasn't able to show his full potential at Oregon. And I think Heupel is going to bring his full potential and more if what he did with Jalen Hyatt is any indication of what Josh Heupel can do with wide receivers. And then you go to Squirrel White, who's super speedy, who shined in the Orange Bowl. You go to Ramel Keaton, who had some incredible moments. Some of the most important catches of all last season were from Ramel Keaton, and he almost gets forgotten in that room. It's crazy. And you just keep going down there. There's a set of young guys that are coming in, true freshmen that have a ton of potential. But I will say Heupel in that system, he runs a super short rotation of pretty much just 3 guys, 4 at most. And they don't really substitute out and change a lot because of the speed of the system. So when he finds his guys, he's probably going to stick with those guys. At least that's what he's done the last 2 seasons. But it's exciting. It really is exciting. And then, I mean, you have stalwart veterans at running back. And it brings us back to kind of the thin offensive line being the thing that has to tie it all together. But if they can get that figured out, it's all there for this offense. No doubt about it. I think it could be just as good as last year's offense. Could, and I'll put the big emphasis on could be as good as last year's offense. And it just has to actually go out there and do it, which obviously is a very tall task.
Yeah, you can't put up the kind of numbers that they did last year without good decision making at the quarterback spot and a top flight offensive line. And not to brush past the two backs you just mentioned, Jabari Small and Jalen Wright, because they accounted for 1,500 yards and like 25 touchdowns total. But I want to get back to Milton as the quarterback. From a skill set standpoint, it appears as though as long as he can digest the entire playbook, that there's little transition there in terms of not having a stark contrast to Hendon Hooker in style, where it's like, okay, we need to really change this offense where we're limited here because this guy is a mobile guy, the other guy wasn't, or whatever, that they're ultimately fairly similar quarterbacks in terms of what they can do as long as Milton can digest the entire playbook.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you're going from 1A to 1B as far as that goes, from Hooker to Milton. I mean, they hung out constantly. They were the best of friends. They learned from each other. Like, there's that element alone that they just seemed to be super similar and get along well like that. And then now it seems like Joe Milton has slid right into Hendon Hooker's position of being that leader and being that guy. And he's tried to show confidence in all of his public appearances so far, just really been, I guess I would say, just kind of exuding that overconfidence that you want to see. It's not to the point of being just braggadocious and ridiculous, but he made some comments like, oh, well, I don't lose in the state of Florida. And of course, that's big bulletin board material for that Florida game and some things like that. But no, I think you're exactly right. It really should just be 1A to 1B, where as long as Milton has the skill and the knowledge that we think he has, I mean, it's right there. And that we saw in the Orange Bowl. I mean, he showed it right there against a really solid defense. He put up really nice numbers. And then you add in maybe this season that additional running element that we haven't seen at all. And yeah, I mean, I think that he could be just as good, if not even better, because I think overall his physicality, he has more high quality physical traits than Hendon Hooker does, period. That in no way is that a knock on Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker was, pretty much a Heisman finalist last year if he would have finished out the season. And Joe Milton is just that talented. So it's all about between the ears, though. Can he harness it and be that guy that Tennessee needs him to be? We'll just have to see. We're going to find out here in a couple of weeks.